have made quite a few molds in the past using silicone before, but never have I used a brush on silicone. This is a new product that I've just received and I'm so excited to try it. Let's get to it. Jade Action officials have launched a new product, which is this brush on silicone, and I have actually thought about this quite a lot in the past. Like, there are a few masterpieces that you would really struggle to use regular casting silicone and get a mold, just because you need like a ton of it. So I feel like this way you'd use a lot less silicone and be able to get your cast, and also you wouldn't have to make a mold to actually cast the silicone in. So I have instructions. Part A, part B comes with a brush, which is handy. Now let's quickly go through this. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio by weight. You mix it, you kind of pour it onto your surface and keep applying it with a brush. After the first layer cures, you can apply additional layers as required in 15 minutes. And then you unmold once it's fully cured, and now you can cast in it. So, okay, seems simple enough. There are more instructions about what to avoid and everything. I'm not going to go through all the detail, but I will link this in the description along with my discount code. I'm excited. I want to get to it, and I have just the thing I want to make a mold of. So I have these ceramic fish, and I've had them for ages now, and they kind of have this thing at the bottom where you can actually hang these on the wall as it is. But I've been meaning to make a mold of these since forever, and I've just not done it just because of the sheer volume of silicone it's going to take and the fact that I'll have to make a housing for it. So we're going to try these, and the first thing I want to do is tape off the mouth and the holes at the bottom, because obviously I don't want silicone getting in there. That's just going to make life harder. So I'm just going to take a minute to tape out these bits on any openings, essentially.
2 very boring minutes later.
Once I've done that, I'm putting these on a sheet of plastic and I'm taping down the plastic just so it doesn't like move about when I'm applying the silicone. And I think I've left enough gap between the 3 of them to be able to cast. But like I said, guys, I haven't used this before, so we're going to find out how this goes together. I'm going to start mixing up the silicone. It does appear to be quite thick. I am mixing by weight. I don't know how much I'm going to need, so I'm just going to eyeball it. This is going to be the first layer. I do imagine I'll be doing a couple of more layers just because these fish have tails and fins and all sorts, and they have a decent height as well. So I want to make sure that my mold is sturdy enough and it has like a thick enough lining for when we actually do use it to cast. I've just poured a tiny amount of all of these fish, and then I'm just using the brush to kind of brush it on. And after a point, I decided once it was getting quite thick, I decided to just use the popsicle stick and kind of move about the silicone and just sort of slather these little fish in silicone, if you will. In terms of working time, I had about, I'd say like 7 to 10 minutes. But again, this is all going to vary based on the temperature in your room. So it's a short working time, but I think that's what you want, because you do want it to set quite quickly and thicken up quite quickly so you can kind of brush it on a surface.
20 minutes later.
So after about 15-20 minutes, I've mixed up another batch and I'm doing the exact same thing again. I'm just pouring on a little bit and then I'm going over and sort of moving it about and just getting it on top of the fish, into the gaps, on the fins, on the tail, everywhere. And one thing I have to say, the silicone brush that it comes with, it does become useless after the first layer because silicone sticks to silicone, so that kind of becomes useless after the first layer. But it doesn't matter, you can just use anything. I'm just using my gloved hand because I just think it's easier, and that way I can make sure that I'm getting into every corner. But yeah, I'm literally doing the same thing again. Now my second coat is now dry. I mean, you could by all means do another coat, but let's see what we've got. And also, if you need to, you could go over and make a cast over this. I'm going to take that call once we unmold and see if I need to do that. So I'm starting by pulling away the plastic sheet and then kind of going from there. And while I unmold these, I want to take a moment to thank Judy. Thank you so much, Judy, for watching, liking, commenting on my videos. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. So now that I have these out, it's a case of tidying the mold up. The fish did come out quite easily. I was well impressed at this point. The mold is looking great. Now, if only I was talented enough, like all of those makers that make molds and, do a nice trim of the mold and make it so neat. I do not have that talent, and I'm impatient, and I don't have the tools either. I'm using a rubbish scissor at this point here. So my mold doesn't end up looking very pretty, but it's going to be functional and it's going to do the job. So I'm just doing the best I can at this point. Okay, this has gone swimmingly. That's a good one. I had to use some fish humor. This is going to work. I think I will end up making that cast with some bandage that I was talking about to give it more stability for when we actually cast in these. But other than that, this is working. I love this. Okay, I'm going to unmold these and clean these up, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I have my molds. They are looking so good. I did decide to go and make a cast for these molds just because of the shape and the fact that they wouldn't lay flat if I tried to cast these. So just to make my life easier, I am going to use this plaster bandage, something I got off of Amazon. I have not used this before, but I think the idea is that you just kind of cut the strips out that you need and dip them in water and kind of just put them along on your surface. And then I have seen people delicately using a brush and kind of smoothing out that plaster. You're not going to see me do that. I'm impatient. I'm just kind of cutting them, dipping them, putting them on. That's it. Based on what you use this for, you may not have to do this step, but because of my fish being the shape that they are, I am going to go ahead and do this. Once the plaster was dry, I did a bit of tidying up just around the edges, and we were ready to now actually use these. So now in order to cast these, I'm going to use resin, and I'm excited for my new molds. I need to set them down flat and leveled in order to actually pour resin in them. So I'm going to use some air dry clay and kind of like just plonk it at the bottom and make a base for them so they're not like falling over. And then that way they're nice and secure and I can get them kind of leveled. So that's what you see me do here now. Next, I'm just pouring a tiny amount of isopropyl alcohol into them because I want to avoid bubbles. This mold, it has all of those fins and tail and all of those textured areas. So I don't want too many bubbles. So I'm just pouring some alcohol in because I won't be able to kind of do much once my resin goes in. Now I have mixed up my Addiction Officials resin. Everything's in the description with the discount codes, and I've just put down a thin clear layer into these, and then I want to use some alcohol inks and play about and get that koi fish vibe. So like how they have the orange and yellow spots. So I'm kind of trying to create that with alcohol without having to do too many layers. So let's see how that turns out. And once that layer was almost cured, kind of sticky, I went ahead and mixed up some white opaque resin and then just covered them entirely with the white opaque resin. I'm hoping that these fish turn out quite how I've got in mind, but I honestly don't know. So we'll find out together, I guess. Also, Sky wants you to like, comment, and sub if you haven't done so already. Okay, it's time to unmold these. I am excited. I'm also nervous. This is literally when we find out how our mold has turned out and how it's casted our resin. So I'm just pulling away gently, and oh my god, I am in love. That fish looks absolutely amazing, and the finish, the gloss, you guys, I love it. This silicone has captured every little detail of this fish. I am obsessed. All of my 3 fish are looking absolutely amazing. I can put away the molds for reusing, so I'm just stuffing it back into the housing, and this has worked so well, you guys. I think the silicone might be my new favorite thing. I might be brushing it on everything around the house. Oh my God, I love how these turned out. These are gorgeous. Now let's go ahead and make like a little pond situation for them to live in. So I have this canvas, which was from a previous video that went horribly wrong. So basically it's a scrap piece of canvas and it's textured on the top, so I can't actually pour anything over it. So it's pretty much useless, but for some reason I did save it, and it's a good thing I did because it's going to come in handy today. So what I'm doing is ripping out the canvas off of it, and then I'm going to do a little cleanup, and we are going to use that oval edge, the MDF edge that we have, to kind of make like a pond situation for our fish. So this took me quite a while to actually get the staple pins out, and I'm using like a knife and a scissor and all sorts of rubbish tools that could get me hurt. So don't do as I do, get some pliers. I was just being lazy. Do it the right way, not as I do. But I got it done in the end without getting hurt. So now that I have this out, I've given it a light sand, and I'm going to go ahead and use some spray paint that I have lying around to go over this. Ideally, you want to prime it first, but because my spray paint that I'm using is already textured and glittery, I think I can get away without priming it. But guys, this is me taking shortcuts and being lazy. If you're using MDF, you want to prime it first. I'm just using this metallic blue glittery spray paint that I have and covering the back and the front with a good few coats. So now we can finally work on the frame now that it's dry with the spray paint. I'm going to use some sticky back plastic for the base of this. Again, I had this lying around. Just kind of use whatever you have, guys. If you don't have sticky plastic, use a silicone mold at the base, or use, you know, the resin tape that you get for jewelry making. Any of those will do. So I'm placing this frame down on the sticky side down, and I'm going to go ahead and use some UV resin just to make a barrier again in case there's any leakage, and I definitely don't want any leakage. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to go around with a thin layer of UV resin just to make sure I don't have that issue. Okay, we are finally ready to pour into our pond, and I'm mixing up my deep pour resin this time just because I want to go a good thick layer into this and not have to do several layers. So I'm just going to use the deep pour, and it just makes life easier. I am tinting this ever so lightly. I do want it to be kind of like water looking, so I'm not going too blue on it. So again, do whatever you like, guys. Once I have my resin mixed, I'm going to pour the entire thing inside the frame and let the bubbles come up top, and then we are ready to place our fish in. And this is kind of just like how I have laid them down. I feel like they look quite sort of natural and circly and swimmy. And also looking at this, you guys, I am a Piscean, so my zodiac symbol is the 2 fish swimming, and this obviously looks a lot like it, except there's 3 fish.
The next day.
Okay, so this is deep pour. It is later the next day. I came in with a gloved hand, sprayed a bit of alcohol, and went over and made some marks into the resin essentially to make it look like water, so that my fish look like they're splashing about in their pond. And finally, I'm ready to show you what this looks like. I love this so much. The water up against like a white background, you can really see it. The fish look amazing. I have had so much fun with this project. I didn't know where I was going when I started with the silicone. I guess you just gotta trust the process and let it see where it takes you, and I'm obsessed with where this has gone. So the silicone, big thumbs up. I'm going to be using it in future for sure, because I can think of so many more ways that would be useful. But look at those fish, and now I have these 3 beautiful fish molds. I absolutely loved making this project. It was something different, something new. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye. If you've enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you will like these too, so go check them out.